All right.
Thank
Well,
you for the
welcome
invite.
everyone tonight. Thank you so much for coming after you've probably worked a long workday or whatever your hustle is that you're doing. I'm Catherine Campion. I'm on the board of directors for Minnesota Women in Film and Television, and this is MinWift Mondays, some ongoing events that we do on Monday nights. Tonight, we're going to be talking about growing the Minnesota film and TV industry with our guests, Melodie Bahan and Bill Hendrickson. Melodie is the executive director of Minnesota Film and TV, a position that she's held since 2017. She also currently serves on the board of the MSP Film Society. She previously served as the first vice president of communications for ArtSpace, the nation's leading developer of affordable space for artists. I think that's where Melodie and I first met, was at a ArtSpace meeting in Los Angeles like over a decade ago. And as the director of communications for the Guthrie Theater, where I also used to work. So we've overlapped a few times. Prior to joining the Guthrie, Melodie spent 10 years in New York, where she served as the president of NOW, National Organization of Women New York City. She worked in community relations for New York City Comptroller Elizabeth Holtzman, as well as on several political campaigns. Bill Hendrickson is the Director of Locals Administration for the Twin Cities and Michigan locals of SAG-AFTRA. Bill began his career with SAG-AFTRA in 2012 as an organizer in the union's Kansas City office. I deal with Bill quite a lot as a SAG-AFTRA member myself. As an organizer, he has helped journalists at several Chicago broadcast news stations form unions and negotiate their first contracts. Before joining SAG-AFTRA, Bill worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs and also served 10 years as an Army medic. Interesting anecdote. So we will have a chance at the end for a Q&A. So we're not going to interrupt Bill and Melodie while they do their presentation, but if you either want to hold your questions or pop your questions into the chat, then Kathy Ferry will be fielding them and either answering as she can, or we'll hold them till the end for a Q&A. So with that, I will pass it off to you, Melodie, for the brief background on past attempts.
Okay, welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's great to see familiar faces. It's great to see any faces these days. Um, a little history. Minnesota uh, developed its incentive program, which is a rebate program. That is what we currently have. It has been until recently known as snowbait. We don't call it that anymore. We hate that. But it is a cash rebate program. Incentive programs that are the most successful around the country are tax credit programs. Our incentive program it relies on a direct appropriation from the legislature in the budget. And that means that it is sort of inherently unstable from year to year, because we never know if we're going to have an appropriation of $5 million or zero. And we've had both. In the last number of years, since I've been executive director, the appropriation for the rebate has remained at $500,000 per fiscal year. And as you all know, that is nothing for film and TV production, and it usually gets snapped up in a matter of the first couple of months of the fiscal year. So when I started, it was clear that what we really need to do if we want to grow our industry and rebuild it basically to where it was before the time of incentives, we need a tax credit program. A tax credit program is stable. It's funded at a consistent level for a set period of time, or in many states for in perpetuity until it's repealed. And why that really matters is for episodic. I think we all understand that right now some of the most creative work in the industry is happening in the episodic world. It is a great economic impact because it is a series, streaming television, will come to a location and basically plan to be there for 5 to 7 years. And that is the kind of thing that will draw private business investment, infrastructure investment, capital investment. So tax credit was the way we want to go. We hope to have both programs, and I can talk about that later if you'd like. So in 2019, we went to the legislature for the first time with a tax credit incentive, and I'll get into details on what the bill is. So in 2019, we got a terrific sponsor in Representative Dave Lisselgard, who is from the Iron Range. And we got hearings in both houses, but we did not get the bill passed. Ultimately, we didn't end up in the omnibus bill. Not surprising, given it was our first year. And then, of course, last year, we were feeling really good because we'd done a lot of education. We had a lot more support, and then pandemic happened. So brings us to this year. So this year we have the tax credit bill again, and things are different this time, and we are cautiously optimistic. And so, Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about a couple of, from your perspective, what's different this time?
Yeah, so well, from my perspective, you know, my background as an organizer, kind of, it's the old adage of to a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And so when we had a membership meeting a few years ago, Melodie was there, and we invited Dave Lisselgard, and he talked about this, and he talked about some of the things we needed to do. And my organizer brain kicked in. I was like, we need to organize. And so we had some terrific members show up at that meeting that they left this meeting just fired up that we need to do whatever we can to build a coalition that's going to carry this thing. And I see Casey Lewis is on this call. He has been one of the strongest supporters, the most consistent, just unwavering supporters of this. And starting with Casey, with Mark Bradley, our organizing chair for the local, we started to meet with, you know, we just started trying to figure this out. Like, who do we have to talk to? And we looked at where we were. We're a union, and we're members of the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, the St. Paul Regional Labor Federation, the Minnesota State AFL-CIO. So we started there. And there was a period of time, about 10 weeks this summer, where I was on furlough, and it was Casey who was attending these meetings, who was banging the drum, who was getting folks interested. Hey, this tax incentive for film has brought so many jobs to so many other states, and not just acting jobs, not just directing jobs or camera jobs or crew jobs, but when you bring a film crew to a location to shoot, it fills the hotels, it fills the restaurants, it fills the tax coffers for the city, wherever you're shooting. So that was the message he'd carried forward. And when I came back from furlough in August, I had seen the amount of enthusiasm that had been built up. And from there, it's just been kind of running to catch up. You know, we met with presidents for the 6 regional labor federations around the state of Minnesota. We got, you know, support from all of them. The Minnesota State AFL-CIO passed a resolution exactly as written by our member Mark Bradley that called for a statewide film tax incentive, and they included it in their legislative agenda for the year. So on our end, yeah, it's just SAG-AFTRA's involvement has been, you know, so much bigger in this than it has in the past. And we've made so many great friends through IATSE and the Teamsters, which have led to all the spider web of contacts in business and in the industry and in all sorts of other areas. And now we're trying to leverage all of those friends that we've made, all those contacts, to show folks the amount of economic boost this can bring to the state, especially, you know, coming out of this pandemic where we all sat home and watched endless. I mean, we binge watched whole series. Like it's insane the amount of stuff we watched. Like I know a guy who watched the Rockford Files, the whole thing, and people want more. We can't get enough content. And during this pandemic, there wasn't new content being generated for the most part. And it was that limited series that seems to be there's this insatiable demand. The public's viewing habits have been permanently changed by this pandemic, and there's this insatiable demand for content. And coming out of this now, they're gonna make this content. And we've got 2 years worth of content that's gonna get made, and that's why one of the reasons we think this is so important is this coming out of the pandemic. This is gonna be this once in a generation shot where there's the backlog of unmade work is so great, and it will have an outsized influence. So those are the two on my end. The two things have changed. It's the coalition and the sheer backlog of unmade projects.
So a couple of other things have shifted a bit in since 2019. We still have Dave Lisselgard as our lead sponsor, Pitbull, just unstoppable advocate in the House. But we also, thanks to Philip Gilpin up in Duluth, we had a trip to Los Angeles after the 2019 session with Representative Lisselgard and some St. Louis County commissioners, and most importantly, the Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, who was clueless as to what production incentives are, what the industry means in terms of dollars and jobs. And we took meetings at HBO and the Television Academy and a bunch of different companies and organizations. And that turned the speaker's head in a big way. So we have the support of the House Speaker that we have not had in the past. And so that's great. The other thing that we have that's different is Governor Walz has expressed his support for the idea of incentives. I met with him several times during the 2019 session, and this year, even though the governor's budget recommendations do not include tax policies, but what it did include this year, the governor's budget recommendations included a recommendation for funds for the rebate program, which has never happened before or hasn't happened in decades. So that shows that the governor gets this. It's that we are on his radar. So that's fantastic. And the other great thing that's happened is that St. Louis County, as a result of this trip and the great work being done up in Duluth, passed a county-wide rebate incentive this year. And so regional incentives, while they are generally not enough on their own to land or attract a major feature film or a television series, when coupled with a strong statewide incentive program, it can mean the difference between a production staying in the Twin Cities Metro to shoot or going up to Duluth. So it has been really great to get them on board. And in fact, Mayor Emily Larson from Duluth will be testifying at the hearing that is coming up this week, and more on that later. So that's kind of the shifting ground. Shall I just continue, Kat, and talk about the bill specifics?
Yeah, I think so, because I think most of us haven't read the actual bills. So if you can kind of put them into layman's terms and summarize them for us, that would be appreciated.
Sure, it's pretty simple. It is not the most generous program in the country, but what it is, and this is after a whole lot of research and a whole lot of back and forth and talking with legislators and budget officials, this bill offers a program that we think will work both for the industry and for the state of Minnesota. What this is a transferable tax credit program that caps at $25 million in credits per fiscal year. It's $25 million per year, not per project. There's a minimum spend of $1 million for projects to be eligible for the program. It's a credit of up to 25%, and it has right now a 10-year sunset. I would have preferred that it have no sunset, but that's not negotiable with our legislature. So So just to forgive me if you all are already steeped in tax credit policy and how it works, but I'll just give you a really quick overview of how tax credits work. So a production, let's say Disney has a series about a youth hockey team that they want to produce in Minnesota. They will come in and apply for the program and get approved, and they will do their production. They will, spend their money. They will hire cast and crew. They will stay in hotels and rent apartments and do all of that. And what they will get after their year of shooting, after the production is over, they will and their finances are audited. They will then receive from the state a certificate of for tax credits. They don't get cash. Nobody gets a check from the state for this. They get a certificate from the state for a credit on a future tax liability, so if Disney owed, millions of dollars in taxes to the state of Minnesota, they could use these credits to pay that tax rather than having to write a check. Now, if Disney doesn't pay Minnesota state taxes, if they're not liable for any taxes in the state, Disney or whoever is issued those tax credit certificates can sell them. That's the transferable part of it. They can sell those credits to a Minnesota company that does pay taxes, and that Minnesota company can use those credits. That is how transferable tax credits work in other industries. It's very common. There are industries, there are companies that specifically deal in the buying and selling of tax credits. There's a market for that. So that is kind of in brief what the bill is and how it would work. And I'm happy to answer specific questions later on that. What this bill is going to be able to do with a $25 million credit per fiscal year, as I said, it's not the most generous. There are states that offer hundreds of millions of dollars in tax credits per fiscal year. But frankly, we couldn't handle that many projects right now. So we think 25 million is a good place for Minnesota to start, because what we need to do is first of all, get some of those union folks back into Minnesota who have left to work in Atlanta and Illinois and California. And we need to create a pipeline for training new workers. I've been talking about this for years. I very much want to start a PA training program, job training, workforce development program that is kind of modeled after the New York City PA training program. So it's a partnership between a social service training, job training organization and the city's film office. And it has been wildly successful. So we start building back our workforce. We start attracting private investment. hopefully some capital investment in sound stages, equipment, that kind of thing. And after a number of years, after a few years, this bill also requires a report back to the legislature on the economic impact. When that happens, our hope is that the legislature will see how incredibly successful this program has been at bringing in new spending, boosting the economy, and creating new jobs. They will vote to extend the sunset or get rid of it altogether, and possibly raise the amount of credits that are offered per year. That is what we have seen happen in a number of other states that have tax credit programs. They have gone back to their legislature after 5 or 6 years and extended the program or increased the credits because it's working. So, Bill, it's time to talk about action.
Yeah, so we've got this great, bill. We think this is going to really help. But one thing we have is a legislature that kind of doesn't know what to do with it. It seems weird and it seems new. It's really not, but it seems that way to folks. And what we need to do is create a sense of urgency and make them understand that, like, this is a thing that is going to bring tons of jobs to the state. And so one of the things that we've been doing throughout this is a call to action to our members. Like, this is a place where, I mean, this really is, it's such a 50-50 proposition right now that outreach to legislators matters so much. And unlike a lot of traditional outreach, we're not asking folks to reach out to their legislator. We've specifically identified the members of the House and Senate Tax Committee. And so I'll send a link out to everybody. You can also go to SAG-AFTRA.org/TC and go to the news section. And the Minnesota Film and TV webpage as well. That's right. And you'll find a list of all of the House and Senate Tax Committee members, their Twitter handles, their email addresses, and their office phones. And what we ask is not only for everybody to call them, and we provide, there's some talking points, there's some kind of guides to how to do this if you're nervous about it. And we've been getting really good responses. Folks have sent, we had one of our members who's a stunt woman who sent an email with the title, I want to be set on fire in my home state. Because as a stunt woman, that's part of her job, right? Lit on fire, thrown through windows, things like that. But it got a response. Somebody opened it, and we've been getting really positive responses. Reach out to representatives, Liz Lagarde and Davids and Thomasoni, and let them know of your appreciation for this bill. It's hugely important. Like, this is the time we can really move the ball. They're still deciding what gets heard in some cases, and there's a whole deliberative process afterwards. Melodie talked about there's the hearings, and then there's reconciling things from the Senate and the House hearings to get it into the bill. And so what we're asking is for everybody to make the outreach, and then talk to your colleagues, your family, your friends, folks around the state who are in this business. I mean, people who are going to make a self-interested decision. This is a thing that's going to bring money to this industry that we're all part of.
And just to let everyone know, I did go ahead and drop that link in the chat so you can have all the emails and phone numbers. So open it now so that when the Zoom ends, you'll be able to start going to action right away.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the main thing is make that outreach. And Melodie, you had something here?
Yeah. I'm also gonna, is somebody, I'm getting some noise here.
Yeah,
Is
someone
everybody
needs to mute.
muted?
I'm trying to figure out if there's a way I can mute everyone, but I'm not. Oh, here we go. You guys might have to unmute yourselves then,
Okay.
Melodie and Bill.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to dig in a little bit on kind of the nuts and bolts of the process, because it changes rapidly. the legislature, moving a bill through the legislature is a lot like tech week if you're in theater or film production. There's a lot of sitting around waiting and waiting and waiting, and then all of a sudden, boom, go, you got to do this right now. So where we are at currently is the bill has been introduced in the House by Dave Lisselgard, with Greg Davids, a Republican, as the second co-sponsor, and Cheryl Joachim as also an additional sponsor. And I'm just going to talk about the House for a second. So the bill has been introduced. We have a hearing scheduled for this Wednesday, the 24th at 6 p.m. And it is a remote hearing, so you can tune in, go to the Minnesota Legislature site, and you'll see that. And we'll send it out. It'll be all over our social media as well. So we have that hearing at 6 o'clock on Wednesday. And the message for the House Tax Committee members, if you want to contact the sponsors, the authors of the bill, and thank them, that's great, but not absolutely necessary. But do contact other members. And the message is to urge them to include this tax credit in the omnibus tax bill. So what happens is after they get through all the hearings for all of the different tax bills, they will come up with what's called the omnibus tax bill. And the House will make theirs, the Senate will make their omnibus tax bill. And then at the end of the session, the committee chairs and the House and Senate leadership will go behind closed doors with the governor, and that's where the horse trading happens. And that's where they make the deals. So we need to be in the House omnibus tax bill. So because as they say, that is our invitation to the dance. And if we're not in that omnibus bill, there's no chance of getting this enacted. Now, on the Senate side, it's a little trickier. We're in better shape this year than we were last time around. The Senate has some different membership and has a new chair, Carla Nelson from Rochester. And we certainly want the Senate Tax Committee to have a hearing, but it is Monday of the week before they go on spring break. And if a hearing does not happen this week in the Senate, it's not likely to happen. So yes, contact members of the Senate Tax Committee and urge them to have a hearing, but don't be disappointed if that doesn't happen. It's okay. We don't have to be in both bills. We'd love to be in both bills, both omnibus bills, but we don't have to be as long as we're in the House bill. So this is the week. And then, as I said, the legislature goes on spring break. Hopefully they don't go to Miami. And then when they get back from their break, then there'll be a week or so of pretty quiet, writing of the omnibus bill. And then we'll have another push toward the end of session to encourage everyone in leadership and everyone who will be in those last meetings where they will make compromises and trades and decide on what actually gets in the final bill. We'll make another push at that time. So this week, and then hold off a week, and then stay tuned for what happens next. I hope that makes sense to everybody. It is a lot of, there should be a Schoolhouse Rock song for state legislatures.
Ooh, maybe it should be produced in Minnesota.
I think so.
It would be one of those enormously complex, like Pink Floydian rock operas. It would be a lot. It would just to get your head around this. But like Melody said, as far as stay tuned, whatever the next phase of this is, we will absolutely not be shy in communicating this as widely as possible. So, follow Minnesota Film and TV on social media, and I think they'll have the newest for everything. And SAG-AFTRA's national Twitter account's been pushing stuff out, so we will let everybody know when the next phase of this happens. But for right now, make that push, like Melody talked about.
Yeah, I really want to
and
encourage people. Oh, go ahead, Melody.
Oh, I didn't mention the Senate version of the bill is the lead author is Senator Dave Tomassoni, who, like Senator Lisselgard, is also from the Iron Range. So this bill is being carried by non-Twin Cities metro legislators, which is a really great thing. The second author on this bill is Senator Karen Housley, a Republican. So we have always had bipartisan support, but we definitely have it. And that's a really good point to remember, that economic development and jobs are bipartisan issues.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I really want to encourage people, if you feel this call to action, but you're feeling a little intimidated, as a lot of us do, by picking up the phone, because I chose this time to pick up the phone. To me, it's easier to send an email. And I was like, no, this is so important to me. I left Los Angeles. I left a career as a union talent in Los Angeles to return to my home state, only to discover that most of the union work had gone away and most of the work had gone away. So I'm very passionate behind this. And, I discovered right away, you're not going to have to talk to anybody. You're just going to mostly leave voice messages. So, and if you want to call after hours, you're not going to reach a person. So just write a little script, look at the notes on the SAG-AFTRA page, write yourself a paragraph and personalize it about why this is important to you. And because most of us work in the industry, if you can reach out to your friends who own struggling restaurants, hotels, all these auxiliary businesses, because there are people who do think that the film industry is not bipartisan, that is bipartisan or is partisan, and they don't necessarily think Hollywood is a good thing to influence outstate, but if we can really show them that all the tourist industry, all these cabins out there and fishing resorts and boat rental, these are the places that are going to really benefit, because crews don't necessarily come here to film in the city. They often want to film for the country, the beautiful wildlife we have here, the nature we have here. So yeah, just don't be intimidated and pick up the phone and leave some messages. And once you start doing it, you'll just get rolling and really share it with your friends and stuff, because it's really crucial. I haven't seen any questions. Kathy, I don't think we've had any questions pop in. So if anyone even just wants to raise your hand, we'd love to have people ask questions live. And if no one has any questions right away, I did want to introduce Philip Gilpin of Catalyst up in Duluth, who I had a chance to share an ice cream cone with yesterday when I was up in Duluth. He's starting, Melody, I'm assuming you're aware of this, that he actually is starting some virtual training for crew, so that when they come, if you build it, they will come. So he's starting to build it so that when this bill does pass, we're ready with some trained up crew. So Philip, if you want to unmute yourself and kind of share what the project is that you're working on up there as far as training is concerned.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. And thanks for putting this panel together. And Melody and Bill and Casey, thanks so much for all the work you've been doing. It's just awesome to see it get this far and finally have a real shot. So in addition to my role as the head of the Catalyst up here, I'm a board member of the Upper Midwest Film Office, and Sherry Marshik is the executive director. She's here on the call with us. And actually, I'm going to hand it over to Sherry for a sec, since you asked about these training programs. But in short, we've started just basic PA and some other crew training programs up here to try to get ready because of the St. Louis County incentive that Melody had mentioned earlier. But Sherry, are you there? Do you want to speak to them for the programs for a sec?
I am here. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Sorry, my camera's not on, but thanks for putting this together. We really appreciate it, and we are working really hard to try to support it up here and get the word out. Ricky McManus and I have partnered to be the Upper Midwest Film Office. So Ricky is still absolutely part of this and helping to lead the way. And we have created our first round. We're just very boots on the ground, Band-Aid efforts to get some kind of workforce training going. And what we did was we offered a PA course. Tacey Mangan was wonderful and helped to pull together these amazing PAs that came to teach a PA course. And then we've done some other, Troy Bakewell's another person that has helped to do some very basic level, just trying to get people thinking about getting involved. And then we are continuing these beginner workshops and then moving into maybe doing some intensives so people can actually get their hands on equipment. They understand what a call sheet is. They understand how to talk on a walkie, and they can do all the things that are needed to get their foot in at the very, very bottom. Brianna was super helpful. She's on this call too, and helping us talk through some of those items as well. So right now it's at a very nascent stage. We're working with a lot of both educational institutions as well as industry professionals that have been amazing to help get going. And we see ourselves as offering these classes throughout the year. We're partnering with IRRR to work in the Taconite district and then also in Duluth. So
Sherry, do people have to be residents of your county to take advantage of these, or can anyone in Minnesota take these virtual trainings?
that is a really good question. We have had people take advantage of the virtual trainings that were all over.
Wonderful. Thank you.
In order for them to be eligible for scholarships, we haven't worked through all those details with iTrip yet, but we'll stay tuned. We do need to answer that question, and we haven't necessarily, but virtual, we absolutely want anybody to, and we actually did have somebody drive from Minneapolis to do the G&E and sound classes that we offered. So it was really great. So stay tuned. We will be pushing information out on that. And the PA course that Melodie referenced in New York City, we actually talked to a couple people about that. And it's such an amazing program. We look forward to that. And we are, hands on all of your backs for getting this going. And we are really, really excited for what's gonna come.
Yeah,
So-
if there is a link to currently sign up, or at least sign up for an email to get notifications about when it's active, if one of you guys could just drop that in the chat, then everybody can.
Sure. I'll drop it in the chat too. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Melodie or Bill?
So Melodie, there is Catherine, you just dropped in a link for the SAG-AFTRA film tax incentive. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's in the chat. If you go down probably closer to the bottom, it will say who's the Senate Tax Committee and who's the House Tax Committee. You would suggest that we start with the House.
Yes.
And I
yes.
just want, for those people that started late, I'm going back to the call to action because that's the most important thing. The hearing is at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. So again, go to the chat and there's a link there. And if you scroll down, it's more important right now because this is going to be heard in the House to start with Paul Marquette and just work your way down.
Right. Representative Marquardt is the chair of the committee. He's a very important person in this conversation. I will say he's not a fan of this bill, but he scheduled a hearing for us because the speaker is in favor of it and because Representative Lisselgaard is the vice chair of the committee. So encouragement to Chair Marquardt to include the bill include our provision in the omnibus tax bill would be great. And any of the other non-authors, if you happen to live in the district of one of the committee members, oh my gosh, you are gold. You definitely need to. If there's anyone who lives in Powderhorn and who's represented by Representative Aisha Gomez, oh boy, it'd be great if you could contact her.
I called her.
Yay!
Leave her a
Thank you.
message. Randall Berger has a question. You want to unmute yourself, Randall, and ask your question.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for letting me join in today. I appreciate it. I wanted to ask Melody, when you said Marquardt wasn't a big fan of it, can you elaborate why or what the reasons are? Or do you
It's,
know?
well, this is, he is not against tax credits altogether. There are some representatives on different side, both sides of the aisle, who just are politically, philosophically against using tax credits to stimulate the economy. He's not one of those. I think he thinks that there are other more important priorities. I also think that despite having had multiple conversations with him and labor having had multiple conversations with him, much like Speaker Hortman, I don't think he really gets the scope of particularly the dollars we're talking about. And it wasn't until Speaker Hortman heard that from industry executives who make those dollar decisions that it really kind of hit home for her. You know, he's not against it, but he's not an advocate, I would say. So
Oh, thanks.
encouragement,
Yeah, that makes.
encouragement is helpful.
Can I add something to
Yeah.
that, Melody?
Yes, please, Casey.
One of the he was clear when we first spoke with him. He was clearly on the other side of the fence. He had his doubts, and then once we started letting him know the numbers that were behind it and the jobs and economic impact that production can have on state and local economies, he started to warm up to it. But his main point was that he was hesitant to add something else to the tax code and basically just slip it in there and nobody's ever going to see it again. And he essentially didn't want that to be unseen. He wanted to be above board. And, you know, we let him know that there are audits with each project. I think it's just a matter of reiterating that to him so he fully understands that it's not something that is going to go unmonitored. It's the audits for each project. It is the review after 3 years or halfway through the sunset period, just for reassurance there. It doesn't start and then disappear.
Philip, did you have a question about the insurance premium taxes?
Yeah, Melody, do you know what that is? Or yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's a Minnesota quirk. I don't know how it's done in other states, but in Minnesota, insurance companies pay an insurance premium tax instead of a corporate income tax. So by including that specific language, it allows insurance companies to be a part of the buying and selling of the credits. It just basically opens up another industry to potentially benefit from this. So I know the language is a little misleading, but because in Minnesota, insurance companies are looked at differently in the tax code, they have to be specifically called out.
Okay, so but it doesn't prevent anybody from transferring the credit to a non-insurance company.
Oh,
no.
no. It
Okay.
just it doesn't close anyone off. It opens it up so that
Got it.
insurance companies can participate.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Well, it doesn't look like anyone has any other questions. We have plenty of time left. So I'm going to suggest if people want to stay on here, I like accountability. I will sit and email or make phone calls to these people on this call. If people want to stay on, everybody can mute themselves. Go to the website. Oh, we do have another question coming in. But if people want to start, like I know if you turn this off and go to dinner or whatever, you might not come back to it. So if anybody wants to get into it with me and keep emailing and calling people during this call, I encourage you to do that. Ben, do you want to unmute yourself? And if you don't, then we can certainly read your question for you.
I can chat.
Great. That'd be great. Yeah, we love the interaction.
Hey, sorry I was coming a little bit late, but when it comes to specifically speaking to legislators, obviously we've been working at tax proposals and stuff like this for quite some time, and so it'd be helpful to know the arguments that have not worked in the past, so we're not like wasting breath on those same arguments again. That's basically the heart of the question.
Sure. You have to understand with a policy like this, Minnesota has never had a tax credit incentive program. So when we first introduced this in 2019, it's not that the arguments didn't work, it's that legislators needed to be educated, and that education process has continued. What they initially needed to be educated about was the difference between a rebate program like Snowbait and a tax credit program, and how they are really designed for different kinds of projects. One of the arguments that I lean on the heaviest is the idea of a tax credit being stable enough to attract a multi-year project, a television series. I can't think of any arguments that we've used in the past that really haven't worked. Yeah.
Well, one thing on that, we have better numbers now too. Some of this stuff a few years ago, like a limited series it was like, Stranger Things, there's a few. And especially out of Massachusetts, the state released the numbers on Castle Rock. And just it was like the reverse swarm of locusts, where the crew would descend on a town and empty their pockets on a daily basis and then leave. It was like over 200 towns saw location just in the state of Massachusetts, and that when it turned around, it was $4.73 of economic activity for every $1 spent. And so it wound up being this huge thing, and we've just seen new numbers now as these new forms have developed, and especially as they've just tracked this stuff. The tracking mechanisms have gotten better. States have gotten more competitive and wanting to justify that, and it's kind of helped us by coming up with some nice numbers, and in the case of Massachusetts, also really nice infographics that really sell the point for us. So I think that's also one difference in this. It's just we have better market research.
And you can find a lot of that data and information on our website at the link, and probably also you have it on the SAG-AFTRA site as well, I'm assuming.
I was on mute there. Yes, we do. It's,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll just switch it over to.
Ben had a follow-up.
Oh, okay, sure. Go ahead, Ben. Yeah, we got time.
Sure. I guess the question that comes down to for me then is the argument purely numbers? Because I feel like I've heard rumors like years ago, or like, not even years ago, like a couple years ago, like Disney wanted to make like a trilogy of films here and wanted to drop hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm a little apprehensive if that was very clear, as it sounded like it was, and that didn't sway people's minds. What does that conversation mean now?
Well, yeah, no, that's a great question, Ben. And let me just give you a little bit of background on that Disney story. We were in the middle of the legislative session, and I got a call from Disney, who had a film called Timmy Failure, which was based on a middle school book series for middle school age kids. They were doing a film version of that, and as it was a book series, potential to become a franchise film. $40 million is what they were planning to spend. That's what the budget for the film was. the director wanted to rewrite the script and set it in Minnesota, but they could not do it without some kind of incentive. And all we had at that time was the rebate program. And at the point that they came, those funds had already been dispersed. So Mary Ann Hughes, who's a senior VP at Disney, flew out here and spent 3 days traipsing around the legislature with me. We met with Gazelka, we met with the governor, Dayton at the time. We met with anybody. I mean, we were cornering people at in the elevators. And it turned heads. It did turn heads. The problem was Disney's schedule was not the legislature's schedule. So they came to us far too late for us to actually get this done. If we had had more time, I think that we might have been able to get something done. We also didn't have a lot of support from Governor Dayton, I do have to say that. But because Disney needed to start pre-production before the legislative session even ended, there was no chance that we were going to be able to get something passed in Disney's timeframe. So that is a project that we could have had that we lost to Portland and Vancouver. We also, in 2019, one of the people that sat next to me testifying in support of the bill was Zach Sobieski's mother. Zach was the young man who died of cancer a number of years ago and wrote the song Clouds that became this viral thing. And a movie was made, it was actually produced last year or the year before. When I say last year, I mean pre-pandemic year. So we certainly used that as a kind of an argument that here you have this story, this Minnesota story with about this young man, a story that touched the hearts of millions of people, and we're going to lose it. We're not going to be able to make that in Minnesota. And of course, since we didn't get the tax credit, the film was made in Montreal, which subbed for Minneapolis. And, you know, it's just been a whole litany of those kinds of things. We have lost these millions of dollars and all of these opportunities. And while that may not be the best argument, it's one that we have made and do make. But for those of you who work in the industry, what is really important for them to hear about is the jobs for Minnesotans. You know, that's what incentive programs provide, is money for local jobs, and so that's certainly the message that I would convey to the legislators.
Cool. Thanks for that. Thanks
Oh,
for the clarification on the numbers and stuff too.
Sure. Somebody else.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, there's another question here. Are there projects that are that we're looking at right now?
The three big projects that I've had contact with, the first is Blood on the Tracks. Luca Guadagnino, who directed Call Me by Your Name, is slated to direct an adaptation of Dylan's album, basically. Luca was in town a couple of years ago, just as it was announced that he was going to be directing this project. We met and talked, and he very much wants to shoot it in Hibbing and Duluth. Bianca Rhodes, I'm so glad you're here. So Luca wants to shoot it in Hibbing and Duluth. It has been pushed back, obviously. First of all, Luca got a HBO project that he had to do first, and then pandemic. So that is just kind of on hold at the moment. But, you know, a Bob Dylan based movie not shot in Minnesota, that would be kind of tragic. The other one, again, music related films. There, I talked to a director, and I don't have it in front of me, so, oh wait, I think I do. Sorry, I'm shuffling papers. Trouble Boys, that's it. Based on the book about the Replacements. Josh Boone is slated to direct this. It's in early stages of development. The other thing that that I've talked to a producer about is a potential anthology series that would be set in the Powderhorn Park, Lake Street area of Minneapolis. So those are the big ones.
And Sherry says that she has a quick thought on the reasons that she's hearing as opposition. I would love to hear those to get a
Yes,
more
please,
insight
Sherry.
into that.
I think that there, and correct me if I'm wrong, those of you that have been in this for a lot longer than I am, there are two sort of major reasons why they might not think it's a good idea. And the first I feel like I hear many times is that it's not a direct one-to-one. If they, that they're not filling up their tax coffers directly the same amount of money as it's being spent. And so it has to, we have to hit a certain level of spending in order for that to actually be our tax coffers to be filled up on a one-to-one basis. And then there was another study, and Philip, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this one, but there was another study that was done that claimed that we didn't create full-time jobs. I'm probably butchering the language here, but the idea is that Minnesota's very much created these workforce development programs are created to create mining jobs and factory jobs, and where you go in at 8 a.m. and you leave at 5 p.m. and you punch a clock, and it's very much a full-time position, and this is what you do. And can you hear me? I'm clapping. I'm like, I'm so excited about this, but they don't claim that these are full-time good jobs, because they're not 40 hours a week at the same employer for, I know, Melodie, I know, but this is what I hear people saying, well, yeah, but really, what kind of a job is that? So we need to have really good answers in how we respond to that if somebody says that to us.
So, the answer to the second question is twofold. First of all, the construction industry is the most reasonable parallel, particularly when you're talking about feature films. You know, a welder isn't hired to work for the same building, work on the same building for, 20, 30 years. Construction workers, the industry goes from job to job. It is a full-time job. It's just on different projects. So that's the comparison that I use. And in terms of the return on the taxes, the numbers are really, it's very complicated, and that's a really complicated question and difficult to answer, because it is not we don't have the data in Minnesota, because we don't have the program yet. So what we're saying is, give us 5 years and let us report back to you, and we will track that data, because it's not just it's the payroll taxes that these productions will pay on all of their Minnesota workers. It is the sales taxes that they will pay on goods and services. But then it's also, just the the spending that, that the individuals who are working, that secondary spend, the Minnesota residents who are hired are paying property taxes and paying income taxes and, all of that. So we don't have that data in Minnesota because we don't have the program yet.
Every time, if you think about the way when a dollar turns over, so they hire a Minnesota cast and crew, all of those folks, they pay, like Melodie said, the payroll taxes on them. Those people, what do they pay? Their house payments, they pay their rent, they pay their car payment, they buy groceries. Every time they spend that dollar is taxed. They buy a car from the car dealer, who turns around and they buy other stuff. And it's every time the dollar moves to another person is spent, the state collects its sales tax on that dollar, which is why it's so important that this prioritizes Minnesota jobs, because after a while, it turns it into almost a perpetual motion machine. Like in Massachusetts, for every $1 that went in, $4.73 came out. In places like Utah, the numbers are even more stark, where it was 14 to 1.
Right.
I mean, geography has a lot to do with it. You got to travel a long way outside of like Ogden or Salt Lake to actually like find, there's not a lot of big cities there. Whereas Massachusetts is also surrounded by fully urbanized places. You got to figure Minnesota somewhere in the middle there.
All right, Kathy, our vice president, wanted to chime in on this as well.
Hi, I just want to back to the point where somebody mentioned about, how you have to prove to the legislature that this is a full-time job. So I just want to back up 18 years. I moved from Vancouver, British Columbia, and film before I moved here was a full-time job. And very much like Minnesota, we had a lot of features, and it was great, but it wasn't sustainable. And then we got the X-Files, and everybody was able to, and that built our infrastructure because we had episodic work. And after building our infrastructure, then we started getting in just series and, MacGyver, Stargate, Poltergeist, Outer Limit, and most recently, The Flash, The Arrow. It's never ended. Now, there are people that still only want to work on features, but it's all the episodic work that has been like a full-time job. And on a typical series where I would do 21 episodes for a full season, and that's going back a while, you'd have a hiatus maybe of 2 months, and you could work on an MOW or a movie in between, or you just take that break, which often I did. So it was very much a full-time job to me. And so is it sustainable? Absolutely, but we have to build the infrastructure. And by just having features here, we've never been able to do that. So back to what Melodie originally said, and it's getting a really good episodic television series in here. We will build that, and more will come, because once we're set up. Also, on a movie, you bring people come in and they'll stay in a hotel. But to Bill's point, if you're bringing somebody up here for 10 months, they're going to, they need a car, not just a car rental. They need, their kids are coming up. They're not going to leave their kids at home. They're bringing their whole families. They're relocating here. And part of my job was to relocate all actors up from LA, so they would have not just them in a hotel, their wife was shopping, their kids were going to school. It snowballs into all this revenue coming into the States. So important that we really allow people to understand that this isn't just a series, a little bits here and a little bit there. We can make this, and I'll just say one more thing. British Columbia has always been known as 3 Fs. And those 3 industries are forestry, film, and fishing. So they look at film as much as they look at fishing and forestry, and they will look at film in Minnesota as much as they look at whatever our main industry is here. Somebody help me.
Okay, I just wanted to make one point to follow up on something that Ben said. He talked about how gig work is becoming more normal. And the one thing that I want to caution you all is that we are not talking about gig work. we're talking about full-time W-2 employees. So this is not, you know, I do not intend to offend anyone by saying this. This is not some first-time indie feature that is going to try and pay you on a 1099 for, you know, a stipend of $30 a day. That's bullshit. What we're trying to do is build a real industry where people can make a living and have real jobs. Sorry, soapbox done.
Oh, no, I love it. Thank you.
These jobs with
Bianca wanted
benefits
to
and
know if there's
pensions.
any way we can work on attracting episodic projects. That's a great question because I would love to work on episodics here in my hometown.
Yes, well, that's what we all want. So what's going to happen after, when we get this tax credit passed, first of all, know that the industry watches us very, very closely. They watch all of the states. They watch all of these programs. And the companies that, you know, like Cast and Crew and Entertainment Partners, the big payroll companies, you know, keep everyone in the industry updated on who's doing what in what states. The floodgates will open. What we need to do, and by we, I mean our office and our industry, is we're going to need to be on the ground in LA marketing Minnesota as a location for episodic. That means marketing our crew, marketing our locations, marketing our talent and diversity, and, you know, all of the things that Minnesota has to offer.
I just want to say really, especially about our crew and about our talent, about the people. I lived in LA for 15 years. I worked as a union talent. I did a little bit of production, but I mostly worked on camera and voiceover. I couldn't believe the number of times that people were like, oh, 612 or oh, Minnesota. And they all had positive things to say. Like, we truly, what we think we are, the rest of the industry sees us as like hardworking, reliable. Like SoCal people can be flaky, unreliable people, and we have a reputation. So people want to hire us. And I wouldn't have known that had I not spent a decade and a half in LA, but I heard it over and over again with people that had worked with Minnesotans, that how we were so dependable, reliable, hardworking, honest, trustworthy. So let's prove them right, you know?
Well, and that, you know, that holds true. That anybody who has worked in Minnesota, and the last really major studio that worked here was HBO back in 2016 when they shot the pilot episode of Mogadishu, Minnesota. And HBO ended up not picking up the series, but that still reverberates at HBO. The experience that they had here, the crew, and the particularly for a lot of them, the youth in the Somali community that HBO took on as interns and PAs, they had a great experience. And so, yes, Bianca brings up Laurel Avenue. For those of you who are of a certain age, you may remember the first thing HBO did in Minnesota was it was what we now think of as a limited series called Laurel Avenue. It was a 2-part movie about a Black family in St. Paul over the course of a weekend. And unfortunately, for some reason, you cannot stream it anywhere. It's not available streaming, but it is so great. And that production had such a huge impact on the community where it was shot, and the crew and the actors. And we had back in November, whenever it was, we a little reunion, Zoom reunion of the director, the producer, the writer, some of the actors, and just had a great conversation. And HBO, you know, the Laurel Avenue alumni were like, well, let's do it, you know, let's reboot this. And so I talked to HBO and they were like, send us a proposal, send us a script, somebody get it to us and we'll think about it. But of course, that hinges on getting a tax credit. So, but of all the things that they're rebooting right now, Laurel Avenue would be fantastic.
Yeah, let's push that. And Philip, you have another thing to chime in about. Please
Yeah,
unmute.
just to pile on everything that Melodie's been talking about in terms of getting the episodics here. When we have the Catalyst Festival up here in Duluth every year, Melody, you were here a couple years ago. The TV people, Catalyst, for those people who don't know, we're focused on television in the way that Sundance is focused on film. We don't do film, we just do episodics. All they were asking us was, how's your incentive? What's your incentive? Can we be here? Can we shoot here? Can we move here? So Minnesota has a unique a unique opportunity through the partnership with Catalyst to actually have the TV industry is already going to be coming here every year now. And a little just announcement for the group, we are going to be holding the festival this fall in Duluth. The details on that will be announced in early April. But if all this great work that you guys are doing, if you guys can get this bill done and through, that's just going to be so much more fuel to the fire when we get to October, and all those producers that are coming in for Catalyst are going to be able to stay and work here, and they're waiting for it.
Right on. Philip, while I'm chatting, if you could just drop a link to Catalyst for if anyone among us has not gotten on their email list, please sign up so that you know what's going on with Catalyst. I worked for Catalyst the first year, the last year before pandemic, and I can't wait to do it again. So yeah, please people come up for that and promote that. So we're going to start wrapping things up now. I really appreciate not only the members, but how many non-members came. I don't know how many of you came from my big email push. I emailed like 85 producers around Minnesota, and I know a bunch of you signed up from that. So thank you so much. I wanted to make it so clear that Minnesota Women in Film and Television is not just for women. We have a male treasurer. We have many males on board, and we would love to have more. If you are interested in promoting women in the industry, if you know women, if you have a mother or a daughter or a sister or a lover or a friend, please, join Women in Film. There are some benefits to membership. This was an open event, but we do have events that are only for members or free for members and then cost for non-members. So there are certainly perks to membership. I think Kathy's dropping the link in the chat right now, so you can look and see if it's right for you to sign up now or later, or at least get on our email list so you can decide to join later. The next 3 events we have coming up, Chris Newbury is moderating Docu Club Minnesota, and Sandra Capra from MinWift board member are going to be doing that. That is, I'm not sure if that's members only or open to all. Amanda Day and I make a living as a voice talent. So if you have anyone, if you are interested, or anyone you know is interested in getting into voiceover, we're going to be doing Voiceover 101. This is a workshop I usually teach for like $50 to $100. It is free to members, and it is only $20. I didn't set that price, but apparently that's what it is. $20 for non-members, but for only $35 more, you can get a whole year membership and support women in film. The next thing after that is Women Negotiating for Ourselves, and that is on May 24th. So consider joining membership, or at least following membership and spreading the good news. So thank you so much for everyone for your hard work. I really have faith that this is going to pass, especially with everyone's work on it. And we'll check in next time to talk about, now that the bill has been passed, what next? What do we do now?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for putting this on.